Since the dawn of time, there's been discussions, conversations, and arguments about which bands are emo and which bands aren't emo. Today, I wanted to assemble the real emo bands, the pioneers, the bands that without question are emo. So, where do we begin? Do I use Google? Do I just use a timeline? Instead, I'm going to use the emo copy pasta. A copy pasta, for those who don't know, is basically an ancient word for meme. Now, this specific copy pasta usually pops up from time to time. It's always around the discussion about which bands are emo and which bands aren't emo, so it seemed like a good place to start. If you've never read the emo copy pasta, here it is. Real emo only consists of the DC emotional hardcore scene and the late 90s screamo scene. What is known by Midwest emo is nothing but alternative rock with questionable real emo influence. When people try to argue that bands like My Chemical Romance are not real emo while saying that Sunny Day Real Estate is, I can't help not to cringe because they are just as fake emo as My Chemical Romance, plus the pretentiousness. Real emo sounds energetic, powerful, and somewhat hateful. Fake emo is weak, self-pity, and a failed attempt to direct energy and emotion into music. Some examples of real emo are Page 99, Rites of Spring, Cap and Jazz, the only real emo band from the Midwest scene, and Loma Prieta. Some examples of fake emo are American Football, My Chemical Romance, and Mineral. Emo belongs to hardcore, not to indie, pop punk, alt-rock, or any other mainstream genre. What I just read is ancient historical text that is hanging in the mythological emo museum. So the emo copy pasta gives us 4 bands: Page 99, Rites of Spring, Cap and Jazz, and Loma Prieta. So let's start there. I think the best way to do this is the same way that I think most people check out new bands and artists. They'd go to their favorite streaming service and listen to the 3, 4, 5 most popular songs. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Alright, first up is Rites of Spring, and I'm going to be listening to all these bands for the first time. Despite, me obviously talking about music all the time, I'm not going to pretend that I've listened to every band in existence, especially on a regular basis. So here we go, Rites of Spring. Their top songs are For Want Of, Spring, Deeper Than Inside, Drink Deep, and Haynes Point. Alright, that's Rites of Spring, and honestly, they just sound like a worse version of the Ramones. Alright, next up is Page 99, a band that I've actually never heard of, discussed when, talking about the best emo bands of all time, or important emo bands, I guess. Oh man, are they not on Spotify? That stinks. Is there a period or something? Or oh man, you actually have to spell out Page 99? Alright, well, we're just gonna skip them. Alright, next up is Cap and Jazz. Here we go. Kitty cat, kitty, 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 kitty cat. I don't know why this band is so obsessed with cats. Alright, here we go. The last band, Loma Prieta, finally. Alright, here we go. Oh, I forgot to plug my headphones back in. Wow, if those are the real emo bands, no wonder the genre is dead. After all of that, I'm sweating, I'm hot. Let me go change into something much more comfortable. Yup, this definitely feels better. Let me fix the hat. Hopefully the comment section isn't too crazy right about now. Alright, let's get serious. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. The conversation about which bands are emo and which bands aren't emo, that does happen a lot, but honestly, I don't really care. I think most people consider emo, pop punk, and punk rock the same thing anyway, especially emo and pop punk. Why would I care if someone's never listened to Rites of Spring or Cap and Jazz, but they think that My Chemical Romance is the best emo band of all time? I thought if any scene, the alternative music scene would be against gatekeeping. But if you do want to learn about the early emo scene and which bands are considered to be influential in that scene, that is what I'm going to talk about today. And then after watching the video, maybe you could be like the guy in the They Don't Know meme and be the real cool person at parties. I saw a comment online that said that emo started the minute Minor Threat broke up, and I think that's hilarious, so we're going to keep that. Let's make that the official canon. Another fun fact is that we do know where the word emo, where that term comes from, or at least when it was first used. The first recorded use of the word emo was in 1986 in an edition of Thrasher magazine when talking about bands in the Washington, D.C. scene. And we even have images from that article. The label of emo core, emotional hardcore, was used to describe the new sound from bands in the Washington, D.C. scene like Rites of Spring, Embrace, and Beefeater. This led to a famous quote from Ian MacKaye of Minor Threat, Embrace, and Fugazi saying, "I must say, emo core must be the stupidest effing thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But just in case you were wondering, I read in my Thrasher the other day that in fact what my band, along with what other bands in the city are playing, is emo core, emotional hardcore. As if hardcore wasn't emotional to begin with." There's actually video of Ian MacKaye saying this at a show, and it's linked down in the description, and it's pretty cool that we have this piece of emo history that we can watch today. And now I'm going to talk about important bands around for the early days of emo. Now I'm just going to pick an endpoint here of the year 2000 because I really just want to focus on those early bands, and 2000 just seems to work, and if I don't pick an end date, this video is just going to go on forever. Pretty much everyone agrees that Rites of Spring were one of the first emo bands, if not the first emo band, releasing music in 1985. But I do think if you play Rites of Spring to someone right now for the first time, they'd probably just say it sounds like punk rock. It's really until you get to songs like Drink Deep, where with hindsight, obviously, you can kind of hear what would become the staples of emo, kind of the drawn out vocals, heavy breathing, screaming, the repeated guitar over and over again, stuff that wasn't really done at the time, but now we just, assume when you hear something like that, you're like, oh, that's emo. But that's why Rites of Spring are considered one of the first emo bands, if not the first emo band. Then we have Moss Icon and Embrace. Now both bands really just expanded on the chaotic sound of emo. Moss Icon a little bit more than Embrace, but both bands did have that spoken word kind of vibe where the singing was really just talking at certain points. Then we get melodic with Jawbreaker being probably the biggest example, and that leads us to one of the biggest debates in all of emo, which is better, Jawbreaker or Jets to Brazil, both featuring the same singer, and both being legendary bands in the scene, having a ton of great songs, and having intensely hardcore fan bases.
This day could someday be an anniversary.
For me, I don't know. Jawbreaker, you're not punk and I'm telling everyone. And then with Jets to Brazil, this day could someday be an anniversary, might be one of the best emo lyrics of all time. So I'm gonna let you decide. Sunny Day Real Estate. The band was very underrated while they were active. Members of the band would go on to play in Foo Fighters, so there was always this underground hope and praise for the band. And as of this recording, the band has officially reunited. And in present day, the band is considered to be one of the best and most influential emo bands of all time. Moving down the timeline, we have I Hate Myself, pretty much considered a cult classic favorite band by everybody in the scene now. They had long song titles, clever lyrics, dark humor, things that would become synonymous with emo and pop punk years later. They have, song titles like Caught in the Flood with a captain of the cheerleading squad with iconic lyrics like How's Your Bell Curve? Mine's right skewed, average low, very low. They also have a song titled Conversations with Dr. Seuss Aside. Conversations with Dr. Suicide, you get the idea there. The lyrics are intense, they're passionate, the screaming and the music is chaotic and energetic, and I think that's what keeps people coming back to the band after all these years. I also saw online a conversation about the band maybe being a parody band, really taking everything that the scene was doing at the time and expanding on it and exaggerating it to like a parody level. I couldn't confirm that, but I did want to bring that up because if that is true, then I Hate Myself might be one of the first parody bands as far as emo goes. The Promise Ring are a band that I got into way too late, but now they're one of my favorite bands. Their album Nothing Feels Good is a classic. It mixes melodic emo and the intensity of punk rock perfectly. I am going to nerd out here for a second. One of my favorite songs from the band, it's not one of their most popular ones, is Forget Me. I think it perfectly encapsulates, depression, post-breakup, the feeling of not wanting to leave your room, and it's done in a clever way, a kind of a hope-filled way. The lyrics, the crashing drums, everything just mixes so perfectly. It's one of my favorite songs from the band, and I could go on and on about it, but, The Promise Ring is a super melodic band, and out of all the bands that I've talked about in today's video, it might be the one that you might want to start out with, because it might be the easiest one to digest and kind of get a catchy song and sing along to. Cap and Jazz really encompass the signature anthemic Midwestern emo sound. They're also famous for having a wide variety of lyrics, some appearing to make no sense at all, and some being beautiful. American Football I put in the same category as Sunny Day Real Estate, where they're bands that now they're considered iconic and their albums are considered classics, but when their albums were originally released, nobody really took notice. American Football did set the standard for twinkly Midwestern emo, and just like the piano in Black Parade, 2 minutes and 13 seconds into Never Meant will always be an iconic moment in emo history. Piebald is a band that probably doesn't get the recognition they deserve as far as in the genre. They have, long funny song titles, clever lyrics, an anthemic sound that is really used a lot in the modern scene today. And I know that their most popular album, We're the Only Friends We Have, came out in 2002, but this is punk rock. There's no rules. I do want to talk about one more band, a really, really underrated band and a pretty unknown band as far as the scene goes. There's not a lot of people talking about them online. A band called Ashes from the 90s. The Wisconsin Avenue Tour album is what you want to search online to bring up the band. It's hard to find a lot of concrete information about them. I don't know if they were the first band to use dual vocals so consistently, but they had to be one of the first. Sometimes is my favorite song from the band. And that's it. Our emo journey is over. Hopefully the comments are not too mean. I think I did a pretty good job of covering the early bands that were considered emo, some of the most influential bands in the scene, but I am sure that I missed somebody, so please let me know down in the comments below. Please let me know nicely down in the comments below. Also, check out the description for links to all the bands that I talked about, and let me know your favorites down in the comments as well. Please like and share the video, subscribe if you haven't, tell all your friends, follow me on Twitter, and as always, thanks for watching. Let's say it together. Real emo only consists of the DC emotional hardcore scene and the late 90s screamo
Real
scene.
emo only
What is known by
consists of the
Midwest
DC
emo is nothing but
emotional
alternative
hardcore
rock
scene
with
and the
the
late
late
90s
90s
screamo
screamo. When people try to argue that bands like My Chemical Romance are not real emo, while saying that Sunny Day Real Estate is,
Real
I can't
emo
help
only
not to cringe
consists
because
of
they
the
are just as
DC
fake
emotional
emo as My
hardcore
Chemical
scene
Romance,
and the late
plus
90s
the
screamo
pretentiousness.
scene.
Real emo sounds energetic.
Real emo only consists of the DC emotional hardcore scene and the late 90s screamo
emotion
scene.
into music. Some examples of real emo
only
on page
consists of the
99,
DC emotional
Spring,
hardcore scene
Cap and
and
Jazz,
late
the only
90s
real emo
screamo
band
scene.
from the Midwest scene,
Real
and Loma
emo only
Prieta.
consists
Some
of the
examples
DC
of fake emo
emotional
are
hardcore
American
scene
Football,
and the
My
late
Chemical
90s
Romance, and
screamo
Mineral.
scene.
Emo belongs to hardcore, not to indie, pop punk, alt rock, or any other mainstream genre.